Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 120. Twilight Gets a Puppy. Season 1. Epilogue 1. 2 years before the return of Nightmare Moon. Blue Blood Residence. Aviana Manor, a block from the palace. The door to the veranda creaked open and a figure crept out the door, closing it slowly behind him. The pony in question was in some sort of costume. He was hidden under what seemed to be a formerly fancy coat that looked completely ragged and splattered with blood. His hooves ended in paws with fake claws, and his tail was bundled up and brushed to look like a wolf's. His mane and face were done up much the same, and grey fur dye made his otherwise pristine coat look completely different. His parents of course had been horrified, and he reminded them that it was their idea to turn his birthday party into a costumed ball this close to Nightmare Night, and then to invite every noble and tin pot tyrant they could in order to schmooze and promote themselves at his expense. Prince Blue Blood sighed. His birthdays were always more for show than anything else. At least with the costume, none of the mares present knew who he was at first glance. And since he made sure a few of his invited classmates, as well as a few servants, were dressed exactly the same as he was, it allowed him some measure of anonymity as well as getting his few friends hit on by pretty mares so they might get to build a bit more confidence in themselves. Honestly, with that last thought, it was clear he had been hanging out with his cousin Cadence too often. The party was of course a lavish, expensively decorated, and catered affair. A who's who of who was important in Canterlot. Nobles whose names he didn't care about, up-and-coming celebrities like Sapphire Shores, the Wonderbolts of course, couldn't have a rich pony party without them, some aspiring designers, and any pony else his parents wanted to look good for. Another dull party put together by his dull parents for their dull friends rather than their son. Honestly, he really had never had any other sort of birthday party, so he simply went along with it, made a showing and slipped out the first chance he had before any of the vultures in mares' skins could get their claws into him rather than his decoys. He truly did understand his friend Twilight's aversion to birthdays, if not at the same level. He was considering ditching the party altogether and perhaps heading back to school early. Living in the dorms was a bit more roughing it than he was used to, but it kept him away from his parents and their insistence he do everything exactly as they say, so he didn't embarrass them in front of ponies who probably could care less about them. It was a wonder he didn't have a team of butt wipers assigned to his bathroom with how controlling they were. He had the most fun when he went against what they wanted. His date with Twilight sent them in a tizzy, and his time spent with his cousin worried them immensely, as Cadence rarely acted like they thought a princess should. He had not been out of the party long when he noticed the cloud pressed up against the upper arch of the massive picture window overlooking the ballroom. He thought it odd that a cloud would be that close to the 4-story manor, stuck to the start of the second floor at that. Perhaps it had gotten away from an earlier weather patrol? He was considering moving it with his magic so his parents wouldn't go yelling at an innocent weather pony when he noticed a tail dangling over the edge of it. Lovely, a stalker or peeping Tom or what have you. Prince wondered if they were stalking him or one of the other celebrities. Still better to run them off without causing a scene. "Excuse me?" Prince called up. "Nothing." "Excuse me?" Prince said louder. "Shh!" The cloud fussed. Prince blinked. "What?" "I said shh. You're gonna blow my cover." The cloud answered. "Oh. Sorry." Prince paused a moment to consider before frowning. Not to question it. But isn't your cover blown already because I spotted you?" Prince asked, not sure what was happening here. This was a bit off the usual protocol for someone sneaking onto the property. "Why, are you a guard?" the cloud asked. "No." "Then it's still cool." Look, if you were a guard you'd have run me off already. If you were one of the nobles here you would have called for the guard," the mayor shrugged. "Since you haven't yet, you've either got to be a crasher or some pony who doesn't care. In both cases I'm clear." "Well, that depends on who you are stalking, I suppose," Prince stated. "Hey, I'm not stalking any pony." The mare had zipped down off her cloud and had gotten in his face just that quickly. Prince took in the mare with some interest now. She was wearing what looked like a bit store cat pone costume from the Batmare comic series. The black material was stretched tight over her form, showing she was quite well muscled and perhaps about his age. Her wings and the fur of her muzzle were black, likely cheaply dyed if her costume was any indication, though her angry burgundy eyes glaring at him drew most of Prince's attention. "If you are not a stalker, why are you hanging out on a cloud staring in the window like one?" The mare was silent for a moment, hovering a bit off the ground as she seemed to consider her response before shrugging. "Waiting for a friend of mine when I noticed the Wonderbolts were here. Was trying to spot all of them in costume." Prince raised an eyebrow, an effect lost under his wolf mask. "Really not here for the birthday colt? This is a birthday party? Looks like a smoozy nightmare night party to me." Shoulda told her that before she went in. She'd probably figure out a way to yell happy birthday before hitting him with a cake. Maybe it's better she didn't know. While somewhat incriminating, you haven't explained why you're here." Prince sighed. "Party crashing." Wait, what?" Prince stammered, not expecting such a blunt answer. "It's nightmare night, every pony's in costume, and it's a perfect time to prank a few ponies who otherwise would have half the city guard chasing us any other day of the year," the mayor offered. "You're rather forthcoming with this information." "I'm what? Forthcoming, it? I mean, you admit to this rather easily." "Well, yet, what good's a prank if you're the only one to enjoy it? Like dropping soap powder in the royal fountain. It bubbled up like no pony's business, and the first rain washed all the suds away. No one gets hurt and everyone's amused except the ones who like to freak out over nothing. GS probably planting a few black tooth candies like we did at the last party," the mayor chuckled. "I don't think we can top the popcorn prank though." "Gilded cup?" Prince considered recalling something about popcorn being in the news. "Yeah, bag of uncooked corn wedged in the space above the fireplace, but with just enough room to let the smoke out so no one gets suspicious, and when they light a fire the heat cooks the corn and makes it all pop." That filled up half the guy's house. Prince recalled that fully with a small smirk. He had heard about the event and the mess it caused. Gilded had a number of ponies who didn't like him, and the damage was negligible anyway, so the event was largely ignored save when the time came to poke fun at the older stallion. Of course Gilded now couldn't stand the smell of popcorn. "I remember that one. Seriously, great prank, right?" "Indeed. But I can't see much of a future in it." "What? The pranking? I don't see how that helps with how your future will be planned out." "Dude, it's a prank, not a life-altering choice. I've been told that anything one does is supposed to help with who one is to become." Prince nearly recited from memory. Whatever, you sound like one of the snobs. Pranks aren't supposed to be anything but fun. Work makes the bits, fun is what you do with the bits in your free time, it's not supposed to make sense if you enjoy it." The mayor rolled her eyes, glancing up at the house and hopping around a bit as if she couldn't sit still. Prince couldn't help but note how the tight costume shifted as she tensed up to pronk about. "Hey, eyes up, Wolfie, you're drooling there," the mayor smirked, a wing slapping the rubber nose of his costume, forcing him to readjust the mask so he could see. "That's not the fun I was talking about." "My apologies." Fine, but don't make it a habit," the mayor smirked. "Anyway, you should probably get out more then, see the world, live a little. You don't seem like you're that old, and clearly the stick up your plot hasn't grown into a tree yet, so pull it out and go do something you wanna do." "Well, at the moment I am rather curious about you," Prince admitted. The mayor stared at him again. "Seriously, was that a pick-up line? Is that how you guys do it? Wow, you're stuffy even when flirting." "I would say I'm more inept at it than my performance is normal for nobility." "Clearly, on the inept part anyway. But my statement stands, I do find you rather interesting, far more interesting to talk to than anyone else in the party." "Yeah, I'm awesome like that, but I bet it's a pretty low bar," the mayor chuckled. While she wasn't exactly forthcoming with her name, likely for obvious reasons being a party crasher, she did answer to Kat for most of the conversation. Prince was reminded of the times he spoke with Twilight as the conversation bounced back and forth between everything from hoofball teams to wonderbolt maneuvers. Generally things he knew little about, but it was clear she was passionate about. The oddity was when the conversation made a small detour about the state of the Griffin Empire and how the current immigrant policies on the matter were flawed simply due to greed on both sides. She argued along with that with more skill than he had seen on some of his school debate teams. She was a bit cynical, though funny, and in her fields of thought quite intelligent and entertaining to talk to. She was quite exuberant in what she discussed, leaving him impressed by the passion she showed for what she spoke of even when he himself didn't understand it. The tone form under the skin-tight suit certainly didn't hurt things either. She was nearly everything that the noble mares were not. She had no issue calling him out if she didn't agree with something he said. She also seemed to have issues sitting still for long. The mare seemed to wear her ideas on her sleeve and didn't seem to care what anyone else thought of her or what she was saying. With someone so far from what he was used to, it wasn't hard to believe he had been smitten. It had been only a hoofful of hours at best since he first met her, but it seemed like longer, though before he could strike up a new direction for the conversation, or more importantly ask her out, the second-floor window exploded. More accurately, it shattered outward after a high impact from a plaster bust of his grandfather. The window was destroyed in a single hit. The bust lasted long enough to hit the ground before it shattered. Leaping through the broken window was a sheet. A mostly white sheet covered in light blue paisley patterns that were faded. The sheet looked to have been washed numerous times and had a hint of orange about it from hard water. There were also 2 eye holes cut into it, and the figure wrapped in it landed lightly near the pair of them, glancing up at the broken window as a number of guards and servants looked out after the ghost. "What the buck gee?" Cat yelled, looking at the collection of guards at the window. "Ha! Consider this party crashed. You'll never take me alive, coppers!" The ghost shouted up at the guards. "Time to jet, girl, I think we've overstayed our welcome." The mare gave a smirk. "Been cool talking with ya, Wolfley." She launched herself in the air, kicking the cloud she had been sitting on, sending a flash of lightning off at random. The effect was enough to send the guards into cover, allowing the pair of them to take off into the night. Then she was gone, leaving him confused, somewhat soaked from the sudden rainstorm, and wondering if he would ever see her wine-colored eyes again. Author's note. And there's one more chapter to this season before I start season 2 of Twilight Gets a Puppy. This Prince Blue Blood flashback was going to be part of the gala story, but it was big enough to warrant its own chapter. End author's note. End chapter 120. Twilight Gets a Puppy. Season 1. Epilogue 1.